Diamond, Diamond.
A precious gem of the most valuable kind. When pure, it is clear.
Diamond, Diamond.
A family name bringing traditions of love, hard work, and moral values.
This is the Diamond Education Podcast with my mom and dad, Jon and Kellee, England.
This is part 2 of our conversation with Andrew Pudewa, the founder of IEW. You can listen to part 1 by listening to our last episode. We hope you enjoy.
So your next point, we love too, college and career readiness, because this is one I still struggle with, Andrew. Like, I'm in that mentality of, oh, I've got to make sure they can go to college, what if they want to be a doctor or, because I do, my oldest, she's doing nail tech right now, but she loves science, and she's even mentioned surgery type stuff or things like that. So there's always that fear out there. And actually, when we do talk to parents, that's, saying you're non-diploma seeking causes a lot of anxiety for some parents. So I wonder if you could talk about that.
Well, the term college and career readiness, as far as I know, kind of first became an idiom that people were familiar with because of the College Board. So they put it kind of front and center in their test specifications for the redesigned SAT in 2015. So that's when this kind of became a buzzword. But I like to try a thought experiment with audiences when I, do this. And I say, okay, pretend for a moment that you are a person who has to teach, or pretend for a moment that you are a person who has to hire and supervise high school graduates. Maybe you are a person who teaches in higher education to some systems, or maybe you are in business. I own a business. I have 50 some employees. So I'm very in that world of having to hire people. And so you think, okay, what qualities, what skills, what aspects of competence would you like in these people? And well, I don't know. We'll try it. What if you had to teach college students or teach high school students who are in college, or hire them and teach them how to do a job and supervise them? What would you like? What would you want them to have?
So I would say I'd want them to be able to be problem solvers, not come to a problem and just have to stop because they don't know what to do. Like, experiment, be able to maybe work through a problem.
So initiative.
Initiative, yeah, for sure.
I would say integrity and humility.
Absolutely. Teachableness, right?
Yeah.
Some people will say things like communication skills, which borders a little more on the academic, but I'm not sure schools really ever even think about that so much. Some people say just show up on time.
Yeah.
Right? Just basic human respect and punctuality. All right, so we could go, and if I had an audience of 100 people, I'd get 24 things. And then I would say, are any of these things that are taught in a textbook or in a high school classroom? Where do we learn these things? Because they're basically all character issues. We learn them at home. Now, there are exceptional teachers. In fact, I always say, there's only 2 people who work in public schools, saints and idiots, because if you're still there, you're a saint because you love kids, and it's a hard place to be. And you walk the edge of hell, but you love the children, and that's why you strive to stay there. Or you're an idiot because there's better ways to go make money, right? So I always meet teachers that, in my experience, they're on this really, I love kids, I'm striving to do better, but the system is very handicapping for them. So, there are good teachers who can work character things into the very limited amount of time and space and curricular flexibility that they have. But even that flexibility is shrinking a lot. So you might, once upon a time, have a teacher who said, well, let's read a Shakespeare play, or let's read a classic book and glean what we can from this great book, that will help us become better people. Right? That would be the conversation to have. But now you really can't even do that because the agenda of books is eclipsing anything that would allow that to any degree. But most people say, well, you learn that stuff at home, right? That's where you learn pretty much everything that's important about being successful in college or in a career. And at this moment, quite honestly, high school is so dumbed down that college is also so dumbed down that college essentially has about the level of rigor that 8th grade had 120 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I always say to people, you do not have to worry about college because, number one, they're very interested in homeschool students because they have some of those qualities. They have a lower dropout rate than the general population. They generally score higher on their GPAs, and at least schools that still give grades and do tests. So homeschool kids do really well. Why? Because they have a better academic education? Probably not. They do better because they have those things: initiative, attentiveness, persistence, vision, determination to do something, the ability to work independently. And so you really don't have to worry about it. And I always say this, and I'll say it to your listeners, as an employer, honestly, I would take a random 18-year-old homeschool kid, just finished high school, don't even care, diploma or not. I would hire that person before I would take someone with a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of California. That person would think they know something, but they wouldn't. And they would have this sense of entitlement, and they'd be hard to work with. I would prefer a kid who's, hungry, humble, and smart. People smart, savvy.
Yeah.
So, there's that. I'm actually, though, going to do a talk this next convention season called Why and How to Just Not Do High School. You see, the smart thing is to don't do high school like everybody else does, and don't do college either like everybody else does. Take advantage of the dual credit options, the flexibility, the online and distance learning, the challenge exams, the CLEP test. I know any number of kids who, quote, finished high school around 17, 18, 19 years old with 2 or 3 or even 4-year college credit and degree. So it's very easy for almost any homeschool kid to start around 15 or 16 and finish high school with an associate's degree equivalent. And then you don't need a transcript. You don't need an SAT score. You can just go keep taking college classes. And then if you want to be a doctor, great. Go get a master's in microbiology and you're on the path. But it doesn't matter what you do as an undergraduate. And the colleges are getting so desperate because college enrollment is declining because the population of students coming into that age group are declining. The product is so expensive. The results are so abysmally bad. Anyone with half a brain is just say, why should I pay for that? And why should I pay hundreds or more thousands of dollars? I could get a better education in so many different ways. So that's kind of where I see things going is, the system is not serving anyone well anymore. So let's create alternatives to that system. And that's really growing rapidly right now.
And one of the first interviews that we did was with a local liberal arts college called Mount Liberty College here in Utah, which they talk about. We teach them basically a classical education so that they can understand is not what to do, but is this the right thing to do? And then if they want to go get a certificate in coding, like that's 3 or 6 months and away they go. But at least now they have a basis to compare what they're doing to. So.
And then the statistic that only 75% of college graduates don't even use
their degree.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Your point 6, it's really about you, not them. That was a paradigm shift for me as a mom, So I was wondering if you could talk about that, Andrew.
Well, that is one of Oliver DeMille's 7 Keys of Great Teaching, also a great state of Utah person. Yeah. Oliver DeMille has had a very strong effect on me over the years. I haven't heard of him doing anything recently. He kind of dropped off the screen, but his book, A Thomas Jefferson Education, is, tracks of learning environments, and the 7 Keys of Great Teaching have really become embedded in my framework for teaching and doing what I do. But this idea of you, not them, he said that, and it hit me like, wow, that's so true. I mean, how many times have I walked into a classroom, I'm tired, I'm unprepared, I'm crabby, my problems did not get solved by another cup of coffee, and I'm there with these kids, but I'm not in good condition.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, we survive it, we get through. But in retrospect, I kind of often thought, I could have just let him go play ultimate frisbee and we'd probably all be better off. Whereas when I am rested and prepared and my brain is functioning well because I've taken care of myself and I'm excited about what I'm going to teach, well, that's when the magic happens. So, part of what I've been moving into in terms of, conference talks and teaching and coaching parents, moms in particular, I really don't like the term self-care because it has so many modern connotations.
Yeah.
But in a way, you have to kind of look at yourself and say, am I in good condition?
Yeah.
And if I am, great. But if I'm not, well, then maybe it's time to take a mini sabbatical. Say to the kids, go occupy yourselves. Kids, as long as they don't have technology, they're tremendously industrious. They'll build stuff, they'll draw stuff, they'll make music, they'll climb, they'll read, they'll do all sorts of high quality brain growth, soul growth activities with their free time, as long as you turn off all the electricity. And so they'll be fine. But what maybe you need to do is listen to a podcast, take a nap, plan out your life a little bit, or just do some exercise, or just read a book that's going to nourish your soul, and make that a higher priority. And I think it's very, very hard for homeschool moms in particular to do this. And it's very hard for teachers because they got to show up in the morning, sometimes horribly early, 7:30, to teach for the whole day. And they don't have an option of not doing that. But I think there's a kind of a mental place where you can get to, where you can kind of, I'll use the analogy because I'm kind of into fitness and that stuff right now. They use readiness, like recovery readiness. So heart rate variability, and you can check yourself and see, okay, am I ready to go in and really push myself hard on a workout? Or do I need a little more time to become ready to gain the most out of that experience? I think teaching and really everything is kind of the same way. We do not have authentic relaxation happening. Well, I'll use the word recreation because recreation. So we're re-experiencing something that's good, that was created by a higher good. And so we get to read that book, enjoy, have that good, or we get to play or hear that music, or we make, we cook something, we create a good, but we're not doing it from nothing, we're recreating. And that's the term recreation. That's what's really energizing to us as human beings. And so I often, will say to the homeschool moms, just, give the kids the day off, keep the baby alive, and recreate, do some real recreation that's going to help, restore your soul, fill up your gas tank. Teaching is the overflow from the soul of the teacher to that of the student. Yeah. If you're not full, you're not overflowing. And that's kind of a hard concept, and it doesn't fit with our modern world where everything has to be scheduled and planned according to a formula to get an expected result.
Yeah.
But it's a more human way of living. And that's where we find the family is so far superior to the institution, because the family is primarily concerned about human thriving. Institutions are primarily concerned with institutions thriving.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's an overlap, but
Yeah.
nowhere in the world do you find as healthy a structure as a family for cultivating that health that then becomes overflow into each other.
And I think we've talked about Christ a lot, and he himself took time for himself to prepare and to renew, right? I mean, even on the sea, when the storm came, like, he's like, I gotta sleep. So he's sleeping, and he took the time on the 40 days. And so I think that's a really good point that you made.
Did you guys watch the Chosen video?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
we just watched
I love that so
we went
much.
to the
And one of my
theater.
favorite scenes is when he's like rehearsing the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew's trying to write stuff down. And just that idea that he knows everything. He knows what he's going to say, but he's still taking the time to prepare.
Yeah.
It's such a good modeling for us. And
Yeah.
we don't.
Well, and it was more about
don't know
teaching
everything.
Matthew. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know everything, and we don't know what to say always. So we, even more than God himself, benefit from that contemplative period. There's a great little book called Leisure as the basis for culture. Leisure, the basis of culture, by Pieper. It's pretty thick philosophy. It's a hard to read book, but he essentially makes the argument that without leisure we won't thrive as individuals or as a society or as a race of humans. So
yeah. And I actually not that degrees mean anything. I got my degree in recreational therapy, and it's interesting. It's refreshing what you just said, because as a mom, even as a knowing recreation to be important, I tend to think it's more important to put all these other things first, right? And so, but it was interesting just in the psych units when I was there and different things, how people let recreation go and that leisure, and how much it can affect their time to the point of they can't even tell you what they enjoy to do. It's turned to alcohol or other things.
And
so
high school kids today are tremendously cynical about life because their classes and their homework and the agenda of the institution just chews up all their free time. And so they're always overwhelmed. And so then what do is they turn to non-uplifting, for the boys, mostly it's gaming, and for the girls, mostly it's social media and scrolling TikTok and all that. But that's not doing anything to restore the soul, the exhausted soul.
Yeah.
So that would be a good title for a book, The Exhausted Soul. Yeah.
Go with it, Andrew.
You should write that.
I don't like writing very much.
Which is very ironic.
Have a whole book here.
Yeah.
So so leads to our next point.
Yeah.
Which we love. Love is the key. So which I love because it totally is teaching in the Savior's way, So if you want to talk about that, Andrew, we'd love to.
So I got real early in the game, in my mid to late 20s, I was teaching music. I was a full-time Suzuki violin teacher at Kinder Music. And, I'd have a kid come in, maybe 12, 13, 14, girl, 4 o'clock, 4:15 on a Thursday afternoon. She's just exhausted. She's been in school, like prison-like school all day. She may or may not feel prepared for a violin lesson if she had time to practice. She probably didn't eat that well. I mean, all conditions are against her. And now she's walking in to do arguably one of the hardest things you can ask a human being to do, which is concentrate on doing a very hard thing as best you can for half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. And so I figured out pretty early that if she knows that I am grateful for her, that I appreciate her, that I love her, then everything goes better. I teach better, she learns better, there's laughter, the handicaps are less of handicaps, the situational handicaps. And so I realized, well, as a 27-year-old guy, you don't say to a 13-year-old girl, "Hi, sweetie, I'm so glad you're here because I love you so much." You have to figure out other ways to communicate love. And so a couple things I got. One was from my teacher, Dr. Suzuki. He actually explained this, and a lot of people are familiar. It's like the emotional gas tank or the emotional bank account. The idea that when you have to correct someone, it's emotionally draining. We all experience this, right? Yeah. If someone at work or a peer or a spouse or someone says, "Hey, you know what? You need to change. You need to improve. This was not good what you did." Well, you may acknowledge the fact, but it still takes a drain on your emotion. So the idea, and one of the problems of teaching violin is as soon as someone picks up a violin, they're doing everything wrong. So it's almost like just continuous correction. So you have to be very careful in that teaching world. So Suzuki said, okay, what you want to do is fill up the bank account enough that you can live off the interest, right? Yeah. Which, I was in Japan in the Carter years, you could live off interest. It was like 13% or whatever. Mm-hmm. We'll be again soon the way things are going. But so, that idea of you just say enough positive things. And I watched my teacher, I watched Dr. Suzuki and other of the Japanese teachers do this, that they would just find positive things to say, not false praise, but just positive things like, "Hey, thanks for being on time. It makes my life easier when students are on time. And I know how hard it is for my kids to get their mom anywhere on time. Hey, that's a cute outfit you got." I don't know if it's cute, but I know she's a 13-year-old girl who spent an hour trying to figure out what to wear. Your violin's clean. You must have, polish it up. It's good to keep a clean violin. That's pretty. It's just stuff like that. So I became kind of an expert at finding little positives. And I actually, in my early days of teaching, I would count on my fingers secretly and try to say 10 positive things before I would say, a correction or a critique of some sort. And so that became a habit of mine. And the other thing I realized was that there's one universal way in which human beings communicate appreciation to each other, and that's to smile. Yeah. When you smile at someone, they're going to smile back, whether they're in a good mood or not. Yeah. Unless they don't, in which case, if you keep smiling at them, at a certain point, they will have to smile back at you. Because even if they don't want to, they'll laugh thinking how hard they're trying not to smile back. Yeah. So I actually cultivated the skills of smiling better, and practicing in the mirror, different techniques of smiling. And so whenever I approach a group of kids, I know that they have stresses in their life. And I know that if they feel as quickly as possible that I love them, and if they can appreciate that, then we're going to have a better lesson. Everybody's going to learn more and the good result. And I had I'll finish up with one last experience. I would say more than anything that happened in my years of parenting, this event changed my life. I was living in Moscow, Idaho at the time, and I was at the Spokane airport. I was going to fly to Boise and be gone for 6 days. And my little 8-year-old, who was at that time the daddy's girl of all daddy's girls, I mean, she and I were just like this. She just lost it right there in the airport at the ticket counter. And she's just, "Daddy, do you really have to go away again? I miss you so much when you're gone." And my father's heart is ripped out. "Yes, I have to. I have a commitment. This is what I do." I thought, Spokane, Boise, this is a cheap ticket. I made a quick phone call. I said, "You want to come with me?" She didn't believe it. I said, "No, we'll buy a ticket right here. You can get on the plane and go to Boise with me." And Mom was a little bit hesitant. And "No, we'll go to Walmart, buy some, underwear and a toothbrush. I'm not totally incompetent." And so it was the first time she had sat in one of my writing classes, and I was teaching other people's children. And I almost ignored her because, I didn't really know what she was doing, nor did I care, because my priority was other people's children who are paying money to be there. But at the end of the day, after the class, she went off with this family and stayed with them. And then I picked her up. We're driving to the hotel. And I said, "How'd you like the writing class?" And she said, "Oh, Daddy, it was wonderful." And I just thought, I'm good. And then she said the thing that changed my life, which was, "Daddy, how come you're not like that at home?" Because her experience of me being the best teacher that I knew how to be was different than her experience of me, homeschool parent, who's kind of like, "Look, would you just get to work? Yeah, I love you and you love me. We know this, but we got stuff to get done here. And it's stressful if you don't do what we need you to do." And how easy it is for me to shift that way. And so after that experience, I think I really changed my behavior. I tried to change my behavior at home to be that kind of unconditionally loving, unconditionally supportive, unconditionally enthusiastic, excited about the efforts of children. And it's so easy to be that way with other people's children who you don't know so intimately, and to be suspicious of your own, like, I know you're not doing your best. And having that kind of pollute the emotional world. So it's hard, but that's kind of what I learned is, if you're teaching with love, everything goes better. And if you're not, you might as well just go do something else.
That's awesome. I love that.
It's amazing.
We've noticed, because I tend to have my to-do list.
And sometimes the kids are part of the to-do list.
Yes, like we got to get, and I love, like this week, my one daughter's doing nail tech, and I went and spent hours. She did a mani-pedi at the tech there, which I am not a person who likes my nails done, right? Like, so I went there, and just that day after spending that time with her, like, she was excited that night. I said, "How about you hurry and get ready for bed, and then we can sit and chat." And she came running in the room, "Huh, John, I'm ready." Like, and this is my this is my almost 17-year-old daughter, right? Like, and it made me realize again what you're saying, like, when she knows she's loved, and that quality time you have with them is key to their learning. And she's more, we've had more conversations spiritually because of it, things like that. Even last night when I pulled in the garage, she opened the door and was like, "I did acrylics tonight, Mom." Like, where before she might not have, type of a thing. So I love that, Andrew. Love is key. So we like to end our podcast with one question, Andrew. Who is someone you admire from history and why?
We like to ask the tough questions.
Yeah. I'm going to say, obviously 100 answers. Probably 10 years ago, I would have said Thomas Jefferson, but I'm going to say at this point, Frederick Douglass. If any of the listeners have not read at least one version of his autobiography or a biography of his life, he's just a truly, truly amazing person in terms of being self-educated, in terms of finding his mission. You were talking a little bit about that, and then having this level of eloquence and mastery of language and concept, and then harnessing it for the purpose that he was put on earth for at that time, to speak out for equal human rights. As Jefferson wrote in the Declaration, but because of circumstances could not necessarily live up to that ideal, then 100 years later, we see people like Frederick Douglass standing on that foundation of the equality of human souls before God, and then being able to be so effective in the world. Just, if you don't want to read his whole biography, just go, it's free online, public domain, everything. A speech he gave, which is usually titled what to the slave is the 4th of July? What to a slave is the 4th of July? And it will blow your mind. It's way more beautiful, articulate, powerful, convicting, inspiring than anything that any politician has said for, I don't know, since then probably. And he wasn't a politician, of course. But, you look at the wasteland of modern rhetoric in the last century, and I don't know, with maybe just a couple exceptions, there's no one who even holds a candle to Frederick Douglass. So that would be my answer at this point.
Awesome.
So we want to thank you so much for spending so much of your time with us this morning, and we really appreciate it. How can people connect with you and follow your work?
Well, our website is easy. It's a 3-letter domain name. Cost a bit of money to get it, but it's been worth it. IEW.com. And then I have a podcast also. It's called The Arts of Language Podcast. Although there's not a whole lot of Andrew Pudewas in the world. So if you just search that name, you get me. The last name is spelled Pudewa. The book you held up a while ago, we have that available. It contains kind of the written version of the talk that I gave, plus pretty much everything I've written for the last 20 years. And we have a lot of free lessons if people want to try out our writing or poetry or spelling program. And that would be IEW.com/free-lessons. And that'll give some options to people. And then any questions about our curriculum, anything at all, we have a fantastic team of customer service, all of whom are either homeschool parents or homeschool kids. So we have a lot. And then we also have, for teachers out there, a whole schools division, which is the rapidly growing part of our business. A lot of charter schools, hybrid schools, schools that are trying to differentiate in terms of let's return to a quality academic curriculum and not get sucked into all the acronyms, SEL, BLT, diversity, LGBT, all that curriculum. If you do one thing, you're not doing another. So if you put that into a school, we are not going to be teaching kids to read well, write well, and do math well, and thereby depriving them of the very skills that they'll need to have, quote, critical thinking, which everybody agrees is a good idea. Yeah. But there's no critical thinking without basic skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on our podcast.
My pleasure. You keep up the good work. And if you ever get some little, conference or event or something going there in Utah, it'd be very interesting to see something other than the inside of the Salt Lake Airport.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. Yeah, you are truly one of those people, like mentors in our life. It's not like we see you in person, but with this journey of homeschooling, you've been a blessing in our life. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
This has been part 2 of our conversation with Andrew Pudewa, the founder of IEW. To listen to part 1, you can click on the link in the episode notes below. We hope that you will consider subscribing and liking and sharing this episode with others who may be interested. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to the Diamond Education Podcast.
You can connect with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook
at Diamond Education, DIMOND, or on our website, diamonded.com.